Welcome in on a Wednesday, everybody. I'm Reed Cowan. Okay, so Eve for Ernesto, and the storm has enough energy to create an emergency as it swells to hurricane status. It lashed Puerto Rico. Plus, the race to the White House has campaigns talking money and watching your wallet. This is CBS News 24/7. Let's go. Okay, right up the top, let's start out by watching our video feeds out of Ohio. And here's your headline. A police officer facing murder charges, and any minute, a judge. Blendon Township police officer Connor Grubb will be arraigned. This happening a year after prosecutors say he shot and killed Takaya Young, 21-year-old pregnant black mother suspected of shoplifting. Let's now jump the map to Florida, where our live video feeds bring us inside the manslaughter trial of a woman accused of shooting and killing her neighbor. We're, of course, talking about Susan Lawrence, who police say shot right through a locked door, killing A.J. Owens last June. More testimony expected today. We'll be watching. All right, in the race for the White House, former President Donald Trump, he's holding an event in the battleground state of North Carolina today. Before heading to North Carolina, Trump made a stop at the Palm Beach County Supervisor of Elections to cast his ballot in the Florida primary. In fact, just moments ago, Trump took a moment to speak to reporters. Listen.
Well, thank you very much. Great honor to vote. They've done a fantastic job here, and we appreciate it. We think we're doing very well. We just had a poll that shows we're doing very well, and we have an interesting couple of months ahead of us. I'm going to North Carolina right now. We're going to speak on the economy. It's basically a speech on what's going on with our economy. It's gone very bad under this group of people, with inflation, with the economy itself, and so many other things. The other thing we're going to talk a little bit on is crime. If you look at the migrant crime in New York, it's been out of control, and it is everywhere, as I predicted a long time ago. And we'll be talking a little bit about crime and all of the people that have come into our country illegally, millions and millions. I think it's close to 20 million, maybe it's more than 20 million. And they shouldn't have been allowed to come here. It's causing tremendous problems, causing death. And just it's been a horror show. Nobody's seen anything like it, and it's only going to get worse. They should not have allowed this to happen to our country. With that being said, I'm leaving for right now North Carolina. Do you have a question?
Yes, sir. What has the FBI told you about the hack on your campaign?
Well, they're looking at it, and they're doing it very professionally, and it looks like it's Iran doing it, because Iran is no friend of mine, and, you know, a lot of bad signals get sent, but it looks like it's Iran doing it, and the reason is because I was strong on Iran, and I was protecting people in the Middle East that maybe they aren't so happy about that. So that's what it seems to be, Iran.
Is that what the FBI told you specifically, that it was Iran?
I don't want to say exactly, but it was Iran.
And you said Harris's crowd sizes were AI and that there weren't people there. There's all kinds of video evidence and people who were there who have proven that false. Can you tell us about why you made that claim?
Well, I can't say what was there, who was there. I can only tell you about ours. We have the biggest crowds ever in the history of politics. We have crowds that nobody's ever seen before, and we continue to have that. We have a level of enthusiasm that nobody's seen before. They want to make America great again. That's what's happening. We're going to make it great again. Right now, we have a failing nation. We're in a failing nation, and become in many ways a third world nation, and we're not going to let that happen. Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody.
All right, so there you have it. Former President Trump, now candidate Trump, casting his ballot in the Florida primary. Joining us now live on the stream, CBS News campaign reporter Olivia Rinaldi. She's live in Asheville, North Carolina, where Donald Trump will be very soon. We just heard him say it. So he started off in those comments that we just caught here at CBS News 24/7 saying this speech in North Carolina is going to be about the economy. But then he hit a whole knock list of other things. Olivia, do we expect him to stay on the economy or go off?
Well, Reed, that's the goal here today, is this economic message that he is intending to deliver. We heard earlier this morning from the campaign debuting a new nickname for Kamala Harris in the economy called Kamalanomics. It's a little bit of a mouthful there. But the whole point of that is to tie her back to Bidenomics. Now, that name became synonymous with high prices and rising inflation, even though it was meant to talk about growing the middle class. So Trump here today is expected to hone in on that economic message, but it's happening in a really interesting place. We're in Asheville, North North Carolina. It's kind of this liberal bastion in the middle of a, deep red western North Carolina. So Trump is coming here later today to deliver that economic message, to talk about things like his no tax on tips policy, something that we saw Vice President Harris kind of copy earlier in the week and echo that she would accompany that along with a rising minimum wage. But then Trump's also going to talk about not taxing things like Social Security. That is huge. This is an area with a lot of seniors that are on a lot of fixed income. So this is something that he's really speaking to the people of North Carolina here, trying to deliver this economic message for them.
Yes, you are reporting from a beautiful place in our country. I want to talk to you about another headline that happened overnight. The United Auto Workers filed federal labor charges against Trump after his talk with Elon Musk on the platform X. Do we expect him to say anything about that today?
Well, Trump has been very critical of the United Auto Workers leader, Shawn Fain, in the past. That's someone, Trump sought their endorsement. He's been trying to grow that union base. That's such a critical part of the voter bases in Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. It really can't be understated how important the union vote is, specifically in this election. So the United Auto Workers overnight, though, did file a suit, and that was against Elon Musk and Donald Trump, and that was part of a complaint that they were trying to threaten or coerce those who had filed against labor complaints. So interesting there that they would file that. But they also just had a really big announcement about an hour ago, and it's about this digital in-field program that they're unveiling. And that is intended to help bolster Vice President Kamala Harris. We know part of the reason why she picked Governor Tim Walz was because of his history with the unions and the union vote there. So they're all kind of coalescing around Harris and Walz. It's been very interesting to see. And I'll be interested to hear if Trump says anything today about the union vote specifically, how he would do that for those types of groups. We are just about an hour away from Tennessee here in Asheville, and that's also a huge area where there's a lot of car manufacturing plants, so I could see him tying it in that way. But we'll keep our ears open and our eyes peeled. Reed?
All right, good thing to do in Asheville, North Carolina. Olivia Rinaldi, thank you so much for being on the stream with us today. So while former President Trump speaks in North Carolina, his running mate, Senator J.D. Vance, rallying in Michigan. In fact, we just got this video. This is Vance leaving for that event earlier today. We'll take you to that in Michigan in the next half hour, a big battleground state for both tickets. Now, as for the Harris campaign, the vice president showing some strategy by taking her case to North Carolina. She'll be there Friday, kind of as a counterpoint to Donald Trump's visit there today. Her running mate, Governor Tim Walz, will speak in Denver today, and then he'll make his way to Boston for another event. They are crisscrossing the map. Well, the Democratic National Convention is next week, but ahead of that, Harris and Walz will rally Pennsylvania voters on Sunday. However, this is interesting. No planes for that trip. They'll be taking a bus with many stops that start in Pittsburgh. And looking forward to the DNC, we now have the speaker lineup for you. President Biden and former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton will lead out speaking Monday. On Tuesday, former President Barack Obama on the mic. And then Wednesday night, former President Bill Clinton and VP nominee Tim Walz. Then Kamala Harris rounds out the speakers on the main stage next Thursday. Meanwhile, in the Caribbean, look at this. People in Puerto Rico slammed by a major storm. Ominous skies there in Puerto Rico. These are live images right now where Ernesto slammed people earlier with heavy rain and strong winds. Holding pattern right now at this hour. We can tell you, as you look at this beautiful landscape, people who live there are without electricity. That means no air conditioning. CBS News 24/7 spoke with the president and CEO of the power company there, saying the hurricane in 2017 named Maria and all of the destruction actually informed them on how to be better prepared this time.
Yes, let's keep in mind that Luma started in 2021. And from the difference between Maria, because I was also in Puerto Rico at the time as president of two telecom companies that we brought out. Number one, at the time, telecom, for example, was not considered an essential service. So when I went out with my crews, we were sent back home because, there was no readiness on that. The government today is much better prepared. We are in touch with all agencies. We have the support from all the mayors locally. You can see that heavy equipment right there. We have the support throughout. We have trained employees. We have the support from FEMA. We have a plan that you can go into our website and take a look at the plan. And it takes you tells you step by step exactly how we're dealing with bringing back hospitals. At this point, for example, we have information that we have around 17 hospitals out of service, for example, and we know exactly which critical loads, meaning important customers, starting with health, like hospitals, are out of service so that we can respond quicker and more directly.
So Hurricane Maria, once a destroyer, now a teacher. This is another look, another vantage point in Puerto Rico, and you can see major response there. A lot of helpers on the ground. They are boarding up windows and making sure that everybody stays safe. By the way, in anticipation of this, looking at wet streets there in Puerto Rico, the White House greenlit an emergency declaration for that area. Jess, this just goes to show you preparation matters.
Absolutely. I mean, think about it. The Hurricane Maria that swept throughout years ago still teaches lessons to this day. And one thing about Puerto Rico specifically, that island, when they start getting heavy winds, it doesn't even need to be from a hurricane, just heavy winds in general, that power goes out quick along that island. And we keep a close eye on them right now as they're still dealing with the impacts from Hurricane Ernesto as it's starting to track north. You can see it just below me right here. I'm actually going to drop this. I want to show you where it's at and where it's heading. It's not impacting our eastern coastline at all. It's staying well offshore from the east coast of America. However, it is impacting other places as we head into this week's forecast and heading into this weekend. Notice those two separate cells. They're starting to join together as this is gaining strength right now, moving to the north. As we keep a close eye on where that's heading, well, it stays mostly just in the ocean. Actually, it stays in the ocean the entire time, but well offshore of any islands as it continues to track north, gaining strength with those warm sea surface temperatures really fueling this system. It continues to track north throughout this week. It'll hit around a Category 3 status just into our Friday. By Saturday morning, that's when it becomes a concern for the island of Bermuda. Well offshore, like I said, of the eastern coastline. This is still packing its punch, especially for those communities up there. They're gearing up and getting ready now because that system will look a lot different compared to what Puerto Rico just had last night into early morning hours today. We'll continue to track that here in the Weather Center. We also have a lot to talk about when it comes to the heat in the states, Reed, but a lot of activity in the tropics are very active too. All
right, Jess, thank you so much. So just a little while ago, we talked about former President Donald Trump going to North Carolina to talk about the economy, to deliver a major speech on the state of our money and our wallets. But when we come back, we're going to talk about a new inflation report that could provide a little bit of a counterpoint to what he's expected to say. CBS News 24/7, watching the monitors until we come back. Our video monitors take us now to the Middle East, where we already know tensions are ramping up, but now we're getting word about Hamas pulling out of upcoming ceasefire talks. CBS News foreign correspondent Remy Inocencio has this report from Tel Aviv.
Breaking overnight, Hamas's representative in Lebanon told CBS News that it will not attend ceasefire talks with Israel tomorrow. Those had been urgently called by the United States and the mediator countries of both Qatar and Egypt last week. Now, Hamas's decision could be the trigger for Iran and Hezbollah in Lebanon, either or both, to launch retaliatory strikes against Israel that they have been threatening for the past 2 weeks because of two very high-profile assassinations of leaders in Beirut and in Tehran. And all that news came at about the same time that the White House greenlit a new aircraft and weapons sale to Israel that's valued at about $20 billion, and that includes up to 15 F-15 fighter jets, 30 air-to-air missiles, and more than 80,000 tank and mortar cartridges. And as these things go, those won't be delivered immediately, but would likely arrive in the next 2 to 5 years. Here in Israel, yesterday, Hamas said that it fired rockets towards Tel Aviv, which we heard here while doing an interview. That was its first attack on the city in the past 3 months, but no one was hurt. But in Gaza, at least 17 people were killed just overnight in more Israeli airstrikes. The total number of dead there is fast closing in on 40,000. That number coming from the Hamas-run health ministry. As for ceasefire talks, those are still expected to take place tomorrow, but even without Hamas. And a diplomat briefed on the talks says that the militant group isn't totally shutting down future negotiations and is open to talking, but only after tomorrow, after Thursday, if there is some kind of breakthrough. So there still may be hope.
Ramy, thank you for that update. Let's come home now to some domestic issues, some good news on the economic front today. Year-over-year inflation reaching its lowest level in more than 3 years. That was in the month of July. Prices rose 2.9%, falling below that 3% mark for the first time since 2021. So we're watching with great eyes right now on how the markets are reacting to this news. Looking live at the big board right now, we're in positive territory. Still not gangbusters, but at least we are in positive territory. CBS News 24/7 will watch that throughout the afternoon. We'll bring you how the market closed on this broadcast. President Biden owning this as a win. He's saying this report shows progress in fighting inflation and lowering costs for American households. So let's bring in Kristen Myers, editor-in-chief for ETF.com. Okay, so prices didn't rise by that 3% mark since 2021. We got that, but they still rose 2.9%. So is this a win for President Biden or a win for the consumer?
I would definitely call this more a win for the American consumer. Look, we are in an election year, so it doesn't surprise me, of course, that President Biden would kind of take this cooler than expected inflation print really as a victory for himself and for the Democratic Party. But I would actually say that this is a win for the Federal Reserve, which has honestly kept these really high interest rates that hiked rates over and over again, that really kind of put American consumers and also investors in this kind of a bit of a crunch and a little bit of an economic pain. But this is exactly the reason why they did that. They wanted to see those inflation numbers come down. And now investors can definitely cheer that in September that we're going to be getting a rate cut. And for American consumers, anyone that's watching, we can all definitely cheer that at least when we go to the grocery store, when we go purchase things at the mall or at any stores, it is going to cost us less money. Our dollar is going to go further. And so this is something that we're seeing, that economic pain is easing. And I think it's something that we can all be really happy for.
We know that the Feds will be meeting in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, a billionaire's enclave, in the month of September. Any chance that they could meet any sooner and we could see rates come down? That's the first part of my question. What are you hearing about how rates might come down? We're hearing 0.25%, maybe even 0.5%. Is that true?
Yeah, so that has really been the big question. It is really all but presumed like an 100% rate right now that we are definitely going to be getting a rate cut. But as you're mentioning, how big of a rate cut are we going to get has really been the main question. Now, just last week, we saw a lot of volatility in the markets, and we saw traders really anticipating that we were going to get a super-sized rate cut. That's a 50 basis point rate cut. We've now seen that hope really kind of back off. It is really now presumed about 60% that we're going to be getting a 25 basis point cut. It's going to happen in September. There's really no reason for the Fed to kind of give us a rate cut any sooner. We're not in an economic emergency right now, even though it might feel that way if you go and look at your investment portfolio.
Right.
But the economy is still holding on pretty strong right now. So September is the time that we're going to be expecting that rate cut.
Kristen, you know what I'm excited about? Maybe paying less when I check out at the register for dog food. We did a little intelligence, and we know you have a dog sitting at your feet. We have to bring that dog to our viewers on the stream, coast to coast and streaming worldwide. Show us your dog, if you will.
You want to see my dog? He's here. He's sleeping right now. I'm gonna wake him up, and he's gonna try to join in on the broadcast. But yes, he is here next to me right now. He's also excited because this really means cheaper prices means that he gets more treats. So I get to spoil him a little bit more.
All right. Thank you so much. Always making us smarter. Kristen, say hi to the dog. Let's take you to news out of Minnesota and the primary race for Representative Ilhan Omar. Omar won her Democratic primary against her challenger, 56 to 42%. Omar is a member of the so-called Squad of Progressive House members and is a vocal critic of Israel's handling of its war in Gaza. Let's move now to a developing story on the campus of Virginia State University right now. This is video overnight. Gunfire ended with 4 people shot on campus. You see that huge police response, the lights, the police tape. Here's the interesting thing here. This happened on campus, but nobody involved were students, according to police. However, they have identified multiple suspects. All of the victims shot are in the hospital right now at this hour, non-life-threatening injuries as the investigation continues. Jumping the map now to North Carolina and a developing story. Police hot on the heels looking for a man who killed a child. Talking about Ramon Alston, escaped from custody yesterday while prison officials took him to a medical facility just outside of Raleigh, North Carolina. So officials in the area of Hillsborough, they have the dogs out. They are sniffing and searching, and they are armed right now. They say Alston got out of his leg restraints, somehow ran into the woods and escaped them. So authorities appealing to the public right now. They hope a $25,000 cash reward will lead to somebody calling and saying, hey, we know where he is. Come get him. Let's ride our video feeds right now to Brazil in a follow-up to a plane crash that killed dozens of passengers. This is the result. Families on a tarmac meeting the worst possible outcome. Horrible moments there in Brazil. Officials have identified 35 of the 62 victims that went down in this plane crash. Look at the aftermath there. The plane went down outside of Sao Paulo Friday, killing everybody on board. No cause yet, but investigators say they have recovered 2 black boxes and they've sent them to a laboratory to be looked at. Let's go to Greece now. People returning to rubble in many parts of northern Athens. That's all that's left after a wildfire. Look at that car just incinerated. In fact, this is drone video showing the scope of that devastation. That fire broke out over the weekend, ran right up that hillside. It torched more than 156 square miles. Difficult scene in Athens right now, and here in the United States, same thing. When we come back, we'll take you to Massachusetts for a fire that now has people displaced, a whole apartment complex full of people now wondering where they'll live. We'll be back in just a minute. Hey, we just got this video on the stream. Wanted to show it to you. This morning, President Biden dropped by the first ever White House Creator Economy Conference. That sounds technical, everybody. So what is it? Essentially, digital content creators and tech professionals gathering at the president's official residence there to discuss privacy, fair pay, AI, and mental health with social media. Mr. Biden spoke on the importance of the creator industry. Here's a listen.
But I talk about these inflection points in history, how history gets changed by mostly technology, and it changes it drastically. And think about it. Think about, I wonder if any of you, when you started in this side of the equation, you thought it's going to have the consequence it has. I really mean it. Think about it. It's staggering. And they're changing not only what people listen to and what they put their faith in, but what they're doing, they're also changing the idea of what's consequential and where they go and you know, one of the things that I found, at least as I've tried to stay current, is that you all understand that you have an obligation to record what you think is true and say what you think is true.
President Joe Biden, think about it. He was a teenager before television. Now he's talking AI to content creators there in Washington, D.C. Indeed, an inflection point in our world. Talking about that while we stream live to you coast to coast and worldwide in the palm of your hand. Fascinating days. By the way, it is part of our promise to you here at CBS News 24/7. We watch the feeds from our TV stations, our network of partners all over the country. And we want to show you what our partners at CBS News Boston covered by way of a massive fire overnight. Here that is.
Well, we begin with that breaking news. Dozens of residents evacuate as a large fire breaks out at a multi-family building in Chelsea. This video taken overnight shows flames shooting through the roof. Thanks for joining us here on CBS News Boston. It is Wednesday, August 14th. I'm Brianna Pitts. Let's get right out to WBZ's Penny Commit. She is live on the scene this morning with what we know so far. Penny.
Brianna, a great update. The fire chief just told us that they believe everyone is now accounted for. So thankfully, no injuries. This fire, he does not believe, was fatal. Everyone accounted for. But there were about 40 to 50 people that lived inside of this building. So a big task for the fire department. We're told it happened a little bit past midnight. They worked to put out the flames for hours. And what they're doing right now, we're told, is putting out hot spots. So not totally extinguished yet. They're still going through the building, making sure that there's nothing that will reignite. And he said it could be hours before anyone is allowed back in the building to rummage through any of their belongings. Take a look at some video from when that fire first sparked. This was given to us by a neighbor, someone who lives down the street. You can see the flames just spewing from the roof. The fire chief tells us that roof did eventually collapse. Again, 40 to 50 people inside of the building. He believes there's 16 to 18 apartments Didn't get a firm number on that just yet, but cannot overemphasize how many people lived here. Several children, were told about 15, and several elderly people as well. We had the chance to speak with one resident. Her name is Irene. She lives on the 4th floor. She woke up to her mother telling her that they had to get out. Thankfully, they made it out alive. She says that she is counting her blessings this morning, but very unfortunately, she had to leave some pets behind.
And I'm like, I opened the door and all I see was the smoke. And I couldn't even see her face. She was just pulling me out there, take the baby, take the baby. And then we were like all trying to get out. And I tried to get my cat and I couldn't. They were 4 and I couldn't take them out.
Super scary moment for Irene and so many others. Again, thankfully, no injuries reported. One person was taken to the hospital for smoke inhalation, and we have seen organizations come out here and start helping these residents that have been displaced. As I mentioned, going to be hours before anyone can get back into this building. The Red Cross has been out here. They put out beds for residents to try and get some sleep, but the people out here tell me, after something like this happens, it's just impossible to get any sleep. So, of course, our hearts go out to Irene, everyone that's been displaced by this fire. We're live in Chelsea. I'm Penny Knight, WBZ News.
All right, proving all stories are local stories. Hey, we're also watching video coming to us at the Nevada state line with California near Tahoe. Good news today. Evacuation orders lifted for people who are living near the Gold Ranch fire. That fire started after a car fire. We are understanding people are able to start to come home. Some are finding their homes are okay. We hope this is the scene for more people than not. This fire is about 8% contained. But you know what? We are mindful of the firefighters we see on the screen. Let's bring Jess in right now. We sometimes forget that they're fighting these flames while the heat is so intense. You're talking about heat down south?
Absolutely. I mean, we've been dealing with extreme heat off into the northeast and all the way off into the Pacific Northwest for quite some time. I want to focus our energy now on the south. Areas anywhere from Louisiana all the way over into Texas today, tomorrow, lasting into the next couple days. We're dealing with well above normal temperatures. It looks like this is not going to pop up right now, but what I can show you is our temperatures just below me. Daytime highs today in areas like Louisiana are sitting mostly in the upper 90s, but our feels like temperature is closer to around 110 degrees. The relative humidity is sitting at around 61. So put that into perspective. A lot of kids are going back to school this week in this region, and as they do, they're dealing with extreme, excessive warm, dense air. That's going to continue to be the case for us as we wrap up this week. Another place I want to focus our energy on too, all the way up into areas from Nevada, stretching over into California. Those firefighters have been battling fires for weeks now, and as they continue to do so, temperatures are actually starting to become a little bit more mild all the way off into the West Coast. Taking a look behind me, this is what we're going to talk about. Above normal temperatures throughout the next 6 to 10 days. That's what the Prediction Center is saying. The Climate Prediction Center is saying anywhere from Texas stretching down into Florida. Notice that huge ridge right there. That's high pressure sitting over states like New Mexico over into Texas. But we really want to focus our energy on those really humid areas such as southern Mississippi, Alabama, all the way over into New Orleans, Louisiana too. They're going to continue to see very above normal conditions, at least into the evening hours tonight, early morning hours tomorrow. We don't get that good recovery process, but up in the Pacific Northwest, that's where temperatures are starting to look better. We continue to monitor the air quality as fires burn off in that region. Reed, it has been very active.
Well, our thoughts for firefighters and the people in the path of those flames. Jess, thank you so much. We're also watching the hopes for ceasefire talks between Israel and Hamas. We're getting word one side pulled out of those talks. Who was it and why when we come back? Let's talk about the Russia-Ukraine war. Ukraine continues to push further into Russia, prompting a lot of officials to issue a state of emergency in the Kursk region. CBS News correspondent Ian Lee has this report from London.
Reed, Ukrainian soldiers are still making gains on the ground in Russia's Kursk region. Right now, they hold about 400 square miles, and we continue to see videos of Russian soldiers taken prisoner, along with a mass exodus of Russian civilians fleeing the fighting. 2 regions in the country are currently in a state of emergency. So this is deeply embarrassing for Russian President Vladimir Putin and the Russian military. Moscow is scrambling reinforcements for them him, they need to stop this incursion by hook or by crook. In doing so, Kyiv hopes that that will ease the pressure on its forces battling inside Ukraine. The Kremlin believes that this operation is designed to be part of a land swap deal during negotiations to end the war. Russia currently occupies about 20% of Ukraine, and it seems like Ukraine, when it comes to this incursion, is in it for the long haul. Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky said he's considering creating military offices in Kursk to help coordinate military and humanitarian efforts, although Kyiv hasn't said what the end game looks like when it comes to this incursion. The White House has been pretty blunt about the situation, saying if Putin doesn't like what's going on, there is an easy solution. Get out of Ukraine. Senator Lindsey Graham has been more colorful in his reaction. During a visit to Kyiv, he called the cross-border operation into Kursk bold and beautiful and said, Putin started this, kick his ass. The senator also called on the Biden administration to give Ukraine the weapons they need, he says, to win a war they can't afford to lose. Reed.
Those are fighting words. Thank you so much. All right, to the Middle East now, and another setback in ceasefire efforts between Israel and Hamas. So here's your headline. A Hamas representative confirms to CBS News that it will not send a delegation to tomorrow's planned talks. Hamas accuses Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of not negotiating in good faith. In fact, just moments ago, the State Department gave this update on the matter.
We are aware of those comments, and we fully expect these talks to move forward as they should. And our point of view is that all negotiators should return to the table and bring this deal to conclusion. It is far time for the remaining hostages to be released, which of course include American citizens, and bring relief to the people of Gaza under the deal that is now on the table.
How can they move forward and make progress if Hamas is not there?
So, as I said yesterday, our Qatari partners have assured us that there will be representation from Hamas, and I will let them, of course, speak to that, but I'm not going to get into more specifics beyond that.
All right, CBS News senior national security correspondent Charlie D'Agata joins us now live on the stream from the Pentagon. Charlie, there's so much to unpack here, and we want to get to the talks about Hamas pulling out and not wanting to come to the table. But first, how can the United States keep a lid on this while they're also at the same time sending in military backup for Israel?
Yeah, well, you know, there's so much to unpick, and they're all interrelated. So I'll tell you, in terms of the risk of sounding like a Pentagon spokesman now, you've seen this huge buildup of weaponry. We're talking about a nuclear-powered sub capable of firing 170 cruise missiles, 2 aircraft carriers, and everything that comes with, F-18s, F-22s. When you speak to Pentagon officials, it's all about deterrence. It's all about de-escalation, although it's clearly an escalation. It's about protecting U.S. forces in that area. And there are 40,000 U.S. forces in that area. So, you know, they don't want to say that they're getting ready for a fight, but that's clearly what they're doing. And, you know, a spokesman yesterday was asked, well, is this working in terms of a deterrent? Keeping in mind what's happening in Gaza, keeping in mind the fact that Hezbollah has threatened to strike, keeping in mind Iran has threatened to strike. He said, well, it's been working so far.
That sets the stage for what's going on there. And the reason why I asked that question, because as you mentioned, this is multifaceted. You do have Iran, you do have Hezbollah, and now Hamas not wanting to come to the table. Do you think their decision to not belly up to the table, so to speak, is because of all of these other moving parts?
Well, the whole goal is to revive these ceasefire talks. So in a way, that's a victory. So you're going to have the United States, Egypt, Qatar will be there, but not Hamas. Israel is sending a delegation, including the head of Mossad. As for Hamas, the sources tell CBS News they're going to sit this one out, but delegates will be negotiating on their behalf. What they say is if there are developments, they'll speak to mediators afterwards. So this isn't like dead in the water. And this is based on a proposal that was put forward by the Biden administration last July. It's a very bold proposal that would see the release of hostages in return for a full and complete ceasefire.
Charlie D'Agata, thank you so much for joining us on the stream, helping us to understand all the moving parts. We appreciate it so much. Headed to the Caribbean now and recovery mode in Puerto Rico. Ernesto slammed that island with heavy rain, strong winds. At this hour, we understand hundreds of thousands are without electricity or air conditioning. So many people bracing for the worst. We see a lot of people on the ground there, volunteers there. They're making sure everybody is safe. And the people in charge say they learned a lot from 2017 and Hurricane Maria. They said because of that devastation, Maria is now a teacher as Ernesto slams Puerto Rico. Let's talk to Jess, who's watching this from a meteorological standpoint.
Reed, Hurricane Maria was devastating for a lot of reasons. One thing I want to talk about real fast, though, is the winds that we're dealing with from Hurricane Ernesto, as that storm system is now moving past the island of Puerto Rico on its track to hit Bermuda as we head into this week. Now, this causes a lot of issues out in the Atlantic, not necessarily along the eastern coastline, which is good news for Americans, but we keep a very close eye on our loved ones over in Puerto Rico right now, where that storm is just starting to pass that eastern coastline there as we head into the afternoon hours today and evening hours tonight. Notice the system that we see right here. There's almost two different parts of the storm that are starting to combine together, and as we continue to track this system to the north, it's going to hit warmer sea surface temperatures. There's not a lot of wind shear, which means it's not going to break apart. If anything, it's only going to strengthen as we head into the coming days. So watching this track anywhere all the way from Puerto Rico north, it's going to gain a lot of energy. Right now, it's sitting at a Category 1. It's going to gain strength into a Category 2 as we head all the way into our Thursday into Friday forecast. It could potentially hit a Category 3 for a little bit. Right now, sustained winds are close to around 75 miles per hour, tracking north around 16 miles per hour. As we head all the way into this weekend's forecast, this is the big concern right here. Bermuda, as we head all the way into our Saturday morning. We continue to keep a close eye on that, Reed, as we head into the coming days because we see the devastation from Puerto Rico right now.
Our thoughts with everybody there. We're so glad they're going to get some aid there from the Biden administration. Okay, when we come back, some political muscle in the state of Michigan. We're going to go live to our reporter in the community where J.D. Vance, the vice president nominee for the Republican ticket, will be talking to voters there. We'll be back in just a minute. All right, welcome back. Our video feeds put our focus on North Carolina today, where former President Donald Trump is expected to talk about the economy. That's happening at an event in Asheville, North Carolina later today. And soon, his running mate, Republican vice presidential nominee J.D. Vance, will speak to voters in Michigan. CBS News campaign reporter Torian Small traveling with Vance. This is Vance's third campaign stop in Michigan. We know Michigan is a very crucial state, a battleground state to win the White House. What do you expect his message to be there in that part of Michigan to be?
Well, just like Donald Trump said when he picked him to be his running mate, he's looking to show off Vance as this representative from the Rust Belt, from the Midwest. So he's going around to these crucial battleground states in what was traditionally known as the Democrats' blue walls to show that this ticket is more interested in their values than Harris and Walz. We're also expected to hear Vance focus on the lack of media availability that Kamala Harris has been doing or hasn't been doing, really. He's been making himself really accessible, holding oftentimes several gaggle of press conferences a day, and it's likely that he's going to do the exact same thing after this rally. There's quite a few people here set to hear him speak, but I'm told from his campaign that he's going to dedicate a portion of this event to speaking directly to the press.
All right, and you're still coming through loud and clear with Andrea Bocelli there on the speakers there. Torian, there's new fallout after Trump's talk with Elon Musk, the billionaire, on his platform X. What did he say? What's this all about?
Well, yeah, he congratulated Elon Musk for having what he called a tough stance on folks looking to unionize. He said that, and did it in a really playful way, said that Elon Musk fired folks at X, formerly known as Twitter, looking to unionize. That obviously ruffled some feathers with folks within the United Auto Workers industry. The union there filed labor charges against both Donald Trump and Elon Musk. And then after that, we saw even more fallout. The president of Teamsters, the first union president to speak at the Republican National Convention, gave a statement to Politico saying that this equates to economic terrorism. It's definitely not what the Trump campaign is looking to do moving forward, especially as they hope to build out a broader tent to welcome in those union leaders and labor leaders. Doing this, as many Republicans like Nikki Haley, Donald Trump's rival, primary rival, has said, is just a deviation from the message. She's advocating for not just this campaign, but also Republicans broadly to stay on message, stay away from what she's calling distractions in this campaign. And this, in her mind and others' minds, like former Governor Asa Hutchinson, who I talked to this morning as well, he said that it only hurts Donald Trump's chances of coalescing the broader party of conservatives.
All right, we are where the voters are, and Tareem, we thank you so much for your coverage there today in the battleground state of Michigan. So let's talk about the Harris campaign. The vice president showing some strategy. She's going to take her argument to North Carolina. That's Friday. Now think about it. That is a counterpoint to Donald Trump's visit there today. Her running mate, Governor Tim Walz, will speak in Denver today, and then he's going to make his way to Boston for another event a little bit later. So to the south, where floods in South Carolina forcing several streets throughout downtown. Charleston, really close call there. Despite some closures, video shows cars traveling right through floodwaters. In fact, emergency organizations there issued a flood advisory for parts of Charleston. We understand intense rains, and you see the result there. Cars driving through some pretty deep water there. It's dangerous in Charleston, South Carolina today. Let's go to Montana now, where crews race to control 5 fires near Tower Rock State Park. And look at that. Because the rock is towering, they're having to dump water on many parts of that fire. That's the best way to reach that Cascade Farmer City Volunteer Fire Department area. That is the area they police. That is the area they are trying to keep cool today and without flames. Right now, people in Montana tell us the fires likely started because of somebody dragging chains near dry grass, possibly because of a tow truck. Jessica, you're watching air quality and the heat and the temperatures causing so many problems for firefighters.
Absolutely. And over in the Pacific Northwest specifically, we continue to keep a very close eye on those temperatures as those firefighters are battling those fires off in that region. It is fire season. We keep a close eye on them there. This is what I want to focus on real fast. Down in the south, we're talking about extreme heat building as we head into the following days. Daytime highs anywhere from Texas stretching all the way over into Louisiana are expected to actually hit 90s and triple digits today, which is one thing, but you need to talk about the feels like temperatures if you're talking about areas like New Orleans, for example. Daytime highs today, they're sitting in the upper 90s. However, our feels like temperature there is sitting at 110 degrees. Relative humidity at 61% there this afternoon. Dallas is another good example. Relative humidity is high throughout Dallas and Houston right now. We head all the way over into communities from Las Vegas down into Phoenix. It's normal to have triple-digit weather during this time, but really what I want to focus on real fast is just the heat and then, of course, the air quality all the way up in the Pacific Northwest. What you see right behind me is current conditions. Taking a look from today all the way into the next 6 to 10 days issued by the Climate Prediction Center. We're expecting above normal conditions anywhere from New Mexico stretching down into the south as we head into this week's forecast. Extreme heat expected, especially with that relative humidity high throughout southern Mississippi and Alabama and, of course, Louisiana, too. That doesn't change as we head into our forecast tomorrow, but the good news is all the fires happening right now up in the Pacific Northwest from Washington down into Oregon. We're actually dealing with mild temperatures in that region. Current air quality is still poor, especially near Bend, Oregon right now. That's the region that we keep a close eye on when it comes to low air quality for quite some time, for the past 2 weeks now. We'll continue to monitor that surface smoke, but for now, over to you, Reed.
All right, thank you so much. We want to take you to news out of Minnesota and the primary race for Representative Ilhan Omar. We talked about this a lot yesterday on the stream. Here's your update. Omar won her Democratic primary against her challenger, 56 to 42%. She's a member of the so-called Squad of Progressive House Members, vocal critic of Israel's handling of its war in Gaza. Moving now to the campus of Virginia State University. Gunfire this morning ended with 4 people shot right there on campus. You see the police response there. No students were involved, though, and that's shocking because this did happen on campus. But they have identified a lot of suspects. The victims, we understand, are in the hospital. They have non-life-threatening injuries. We continue watching live images right now coming to us out of the state of Michigan. The Republicans' ticket there landing in Michigan, the battleground state. J.D. Vance about to take to the stage sometime today, while former President Trump rallies voters in North Carolina. Thanks for watching.